As Cecilia introduced me, I'm from Croatia. I work for the National Security Council. I'm also a member of the RAN pool of experts, and today actually here I represent RAN. So next slide, please. Before I start with my presentation, for those of you who are not familiar with RAN, just a few introductory words. The Radicalisation Awareness Network was launched in 2011 by the European Commission to connect first-line practitioners to share knowledge, experience and best practices across the EU on how to counter radicalization and violent extremism. And currently we have more than 6,000 practitioners in our network. Next slide, please. The RAN work is based on 4 key elements. The first one is prevention to safeguard vulnerable individuals and communities, then involving and training first-line practitioners, because these practitioners will be the first professional point of contact for individuals at risk. The third key element is multi-agency approach to provide a consistent and reliable network, and the fourth are tailor-made interventions adapted to local circumstances, because each individual at risk is different, which calls for a case-by-case approach. Next slide, please. The RAN is set up around 9 different working groups. 2 working groups work more closely with families and children. These are families, communities and social care working group and youth and education working group. But we also have meetings where we mix working groups, because as I said, each case requires a holistic multi-agency approach, and therefore sharing experience with other working groups is also very important. Then we have meetings where we mix practitioners and academics, and meetings where we mix practitioners and national government policymakers, and approximately we have up to 100 meetings a year. Next slide. After each RAN activity or working group meeting, a conclusion paper is published highlighting lessons learned, insights and follow-up initiatives. Additionally, RAN continuously issues different types of papers. Here on the slide you can see the most recent ones, or are publicly available and can be found on the RAN website that you can see the link here on the slides. We also created the RAN roadmap as an expression of the topics that will get special attention within RAN. Next slide. So for all of you interested in RAN activities in more detail, you can check the RAN website or follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. Okay, and now I will continue with my presentation. Having had an opportunity to participate in almost all RAN meetings in the last few years and to write RAN papers in relation to women and children in particular, and in foreign terrorist fighters phenomenon in general, my today's presentation will summarize what we as a RAN community have learned about the first-line practitioners, about children who were brought up in an extremist environment, especially those returning from Syria and Iraq, and how to provide them a proper care and intervention. I will focus on European experiences in repatriating foreign terrorist fighters and their families, and lessons for preventing and countering violent extremism in the EU and in the Western Balkans. Next slide. It is estimated that around 5,300 men and women from Europe left for Syria and Iraq since 2012. It is further estimated that around 1,000 children left together with their parents, and that some 600 were born there. We don't have the officially confirmed number of returnees. Approximately there are 30% of them already returned their domestic country. We can broadly distinguish 2 categories of returnees: those who came back on their own and those who were actively repatriated in coordinated actions supported by the government of their domestic countries. Among individuals who came back on their own, there were several waves of returnees. Those who came back in the early years of the Syrian conflict, meaning in 2012, 2013, they usually remained outside the judicial system since amendments to the criminal codes in most of the countries were carried out after 2014. Individuals who were actively repatriated from Syria, in this category, they are primarily children and some quite a low number of adults, especially male adults. Children were repatriated with their mothers in higher percentage in Western Balkan countries, while the limited number of child returnees in the EU usually involves only small or orphaned children and very rarely their mothers. Next slide, please. Generally, we can say that there has been a reluctance among EU member states to actively repatriate foreign terrorist fighters and their families, and that there are still many political and judicial debates ongoing on whether or not states are in fact obliged to do so. The main arguments against repatriation are, of course, on the first place, security concerns, and the other legal issues. For example, not all who moved to Syria and Iraq were in fact European citizens, and because some of them held dual citizenship of third countries or asylum status. On the other side, the main arguments for the repatriation are that the need that EU states take responsibility for the deeds of their citizens, and that currently detained people, in particular children, need to be returned as a matter of humanitarian action, especially children, because it was not their choice to leave Europe and are victims of their parents' decisions and actions. The overall approach has been, we can say, a little bit softer in the Western Balkans, where the political decision was made to actively bring all foreign terrorist fighters and their families. And this process started in April 2019 with 110 individuals from Kosovo who were repatriated in a single operation supported by their government. And then in December the same year, 25 citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina were repatriated again in a single operation. While Albania and North Macedonia are currently working on similar initiatives, but all the activities were postponed during this corona pandemic. However, it is important to say that among these repatriated individuals are also mainly women and children. Of 110 Kosovan citizens, there were only 4 men, but 32 women and 74 children. While of 25 Bosnian citizens, there were 7 men, 6 women, and 12 children. The next slide, please. Generally, we can distinguish 3 broad phases in relation to returnees, and there are some repatriation challenges concerning risk assessment, prosecution, incarceration, and rehabilitation, as well as reintegration back into society. And there are many challenges in each of these phases. Concerning the risk assessment, it was highlighted by the practitioners at RAN meetings that most of the existing risk assessment tools are based on the male-dominated data, and it is questionable if they are adequate for women. And also that there is a lack of risk assessment tools tailored to children of different age. Concerning prosecution, of course, one of the main challenges is the lack of evidence. Generally speaking, we can say that EU member states do not differentiate between male and female returnees, and women have been treated as individuals with full agency, while female returnees to Western Balkans, it seems that they have been more regarded as victims who lack any agency in following their husbands, and that they have been facing a softer approach than men upon arrival, such as house arrest instead of immediate imprisonment, and lower charges in comparison to men for participation in a terrorist group, or that they often received suspended rather than custodial sentences. Next slide. Also, at one of the recent RAN meetings organized by the RAN Prison Working Group, we discussed specific challenges that need to be concerned when we deal with female returnees in the prison field. The RAN experts concluded that female violent extremist prisoners should be seen as a group with specific needs, and it is recognized as important to include a gender perspective in tertiary interventions in judicial context for female extremist offenders. There are also several key elements to take into account when dealing with extremist women in prison, shared by practitioners within the RAN. We discussed if there is enough cell capacity and other facilities in prison for women to prevent the risk of peer recruitment and group radicalization. Then, are there available programs for intervention suitable for women? And we also agreed that there is definitely need for a gender-specific approach in exit work. In the second part of my presentation, I will focus on different intervention strategies used with children who were brought up in an extremist environment. Generally, when we talk about vulnerability to current or future radicalization and violence in children, we divide them into 5 categories. In the first category, children who left the EU with their parents or alone, as it was mostly the case with teenagers or adolescents who moved to Syria without the knowledge of their parents. Then in the second category are those who were born to EU parents or one EU parent there. In the third are non-European children traveling from ISIS territory or other conflict zones as refugees or migrants, either with their parents or unaccompanied. In the fourth are children of homegrown ISIS supporters or sympathizers who support ISIS domestically. And in the fifth are other children at risk of radicalization or at risk of being targeted by violent extremist group or terrorist organizations, terrorist recruiters actually. I will focus on the first 2 categories because one of the main issues today is how European countries are managing the return of children from Syria and Iraq, because children, depending on their age, of course, are seen as both security and reintegration challenge. We divide child returnees from Syria and Iraq into 3 age categories, each requiring. In the first category are teenagers and adolescents, so those from 10 to 17 years. In the second are preschoolers and young adults from 0 to 3 years. It is important to divide them into different age categories because children from the first 2 age categories, so those from 4 to 17 years, were exposed to indoctrination and violence to a much higher degree than infants and toddlers, and therefore require a different approach and intervention. Gender-based differences are also important when we talk about children, since boys and girls were exposed to different types of trauma and played very different roles in ISIS. Next slide. Next slide, please. But all these children definitely suffer from various types of trauma. They for sure experienced, no, one slide before. They for sure experienced, war atrocities, loss of parents and family members, and life in fear. They likely witnessed horrific violence, tortures, and executions. Some boys, especially those older than 9, were probably given weapons or combat training. Some might have participated in military activities and potentially in executions. Some of the older children might have been indoctrinated by ISIS propaganda and educated to react with anger and hate against Western society. Next slide. Also in relation to vulnerable children, I would like to highlight the importance of being aware of transgenerational transmission of trauma and negative effects of PTSD. It means that children might suffer in many ways from mental health issues of their parents or one parent, which also makes them vulnerable to radicalization. And this is why we should not be focused only on child returnees, but also on children of returning foreign terrorist fighters who had never been to Syria and Iraq. And also we should be aware of transgenerational transmission of extremist ideologies. And we learned a lot about that from practitioners with experience in working with children who grown up in cults and gangs. Here on the slide, you can see the titles of two run papers, two run conclusion papers from our meetings, talking in more detail about these two phenomena. Next slide. Few words about children in detention camps. Experts warn that the prolongation of repatriation of children to home countries, which could last for many years, might lead to their further victimization and radicalization in the hands of radicalized parents, in this case, primarily mothers, ISIS or other local terrorist recruiters who operate inside detention camps. A long stay could also decrease the success of reintegration and resocialization programs once they return. Next slide. But there are also many challenges to repatriation. It is estimated that approximately half of these children were born in that area, which means that they are now around 5-6 years old, and it is believed that they will be easily reintegrated when they return. Others who are at the older age are of our special concern. But it is important to highlight again that all these children are first and foremost victims. But we also have to be aware that some child returnees may be both victims and perpetrators of criminal offenses following their time in Syria and Iraq. Next slide. If children have committed crimes, principles of juvenile justice must be applied, otherwise social care mechanisms are activated. But in implementing the social care mechanisms, we also face many challenges. It is evident that most of the EU countries prioritize a case-by-case approach when making decisions on repatriation of children. And generally, we can say that European governments have taken a passive approach on repatriation, and also that they give a priority to orphans or very small children. Next slide. The role of mothers in this process is also very important. Some EU countries are working to bring back the children, but will leave their mothers to be prosecuted by local authorities, while others allow their return. There are still many doubts present if it is in the best interest of a child to bring mother and the child together, if the mother possesses a security risk. But if we put aside the security aspect, practice has shown that wherever the separation of children occurs, in Syria or after return, it always causes additional traumatization of children. From the perspective of childcare and rehabilitation, mother's role is very important and could be felt in both directions, either in further victimization and radicalization or in successful reintegration. It is obvious that some radicalized women pose a security risk, but in the context of raising children, we are concerned for mothers who support violent actions of their children and express their pride if they would participate actively in terrorist activities, and for mothers who illustrate the willingness to act together with their children. Therefore, the mother's influence on the future activities of their children should not be underestimated. The next slide, please. Another challenge is how to prevent traumatization of trauma and some emotional or psychological issues. Also, current experience of EU member states show that child returnees often face new traumatic experiences after return, with local authorities and society, as well as separation from parents, the lack of sufficient parental guidance and family support, stigmatization and social isolation, various mental health issues, including PTSD, etc. Next slide. Exposure to multiple and repeated traumatic events before and after arrival might represent a significant risk to the development and well-being of those children. It also increases the risk of physical and mental problems or disorders in the future. It potentially makes them more vulnerable to future radicalization. Appropriately treated, might be groomed by extremist organizations and used to perform violent acts in their home countries, or that they could start disseminating radical ideas to peer groups, for example, in schools or the wider community, and spread spreading hate against the societies in which they live. The implemented measures should therefore exclude additional traumatization. Okay, stay at this slide. So the RAN practitioners advise to prepare the return plan for each child before their return, with detailed actions and information on who might take over the care of the child and which type of support they need. Then to implement a child assessment system consisting of physical and mental health evaluation and adequate risk and need assessment. And finally, to establish a multi-agency childcare system which should include immediate care and long-term support from relevant services. Next slide. And to conclude, there is unfortunately no one-size-fits-all strategy that could be applied equally to all children, as countries differ widely in their national and local level competences and policies. Current experience and best practices shared within the RAN community has shown that each child requires a tailored individual approach and solutions based on trauma. Care and intervention whose effectiveness should be regularly monitored and evaluated. To ensure proper support to these children and their families or foster families, it is also important to create a favorable condition because they also face many challenges owing to their inexperience in working with traumatized children, as child returnees from conflict zones are. Much has been said about the necessity of establishing a holistic multi-agency approach and the need of information sharing, but when children are involved, it is important to highlight the importance to respect the child's privacy and rights, especially when security measures and keeping records are applied to avoid stigmatization and future labeling of these children. Also, and I will finish with this statement, it is important to be aware that possible effects of PTSD and other trauma could be turn or return to violence even many years after the traumatic event. This is why we have to provide these children a proper immediate care and long-term support, because we still don't know what might be the trigger in the future that might lead toward radicalization and violence. So this was, I think, in half an hour, a brief summary of the RAN conclusions and recommendations related to repatriation and reintegration of foreign terrorist fighters and their families. There is also one slide, if you can return my presentation, with the selection of RAN papers talking primarily on children. Yes, this one. And all these papers, as I said, are publicly available on the link I provided on one of the previous slides. So that was in short from me. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm open for the discussion, opinion, questions.
Thank you very much, Anita, for your comments and your insight on the issue of repatriation and reintegration of foreign terrorist fighters, and for having articulated with your insight and expertise. I would like now to open the floor for questions. Please introduce yourself to Anita when making a question.
Ardian, any comments from your side? I know that you are very involved.
Anita, I apologize. I was trying to raise my hand, so I'm just going to go ahead straight.
I was happy to hear that you will participate at this event, because I know that you have a lot of experience in this field and that you interviewed many terrorist fighters, women, returnees. So I would like to hear if you maybe have some different opinion or different information about these experiences I shared with you.
Yes, thank you, Anita, so much for the great presentation. It was very insightful, and I really would echo with a lot of what you presented today in terms of our finding at ACTRI that we have done in the course of the last 2 months as well. maybe a few questions, if you don't mind, maybe clarifying a little bit for us. You laid out a great example. So what are some of the arguments against repatriation, but also maybe impediments to repatriation of children, especially. So you pointed out illegal issues, political issues. Of course, we have logistical issues. Having spent some time in the camps in Iraq and Syria, I understand the difficulties of working out the mechanics of repatriation. The COVID-19 makes the situation even worse. But there's a few other things that I kind of came across either through my direct interaction or through talking to with the officials on the ground. It has to do, specifically when it comes to children, has to do with the issue of identifying children in the camps. So I've been myself, in Camp Hall, Inisa, and other camps are pretty crowded, overly crowded. Sometimes you can identify them only by virtue of knowing the tents. So registers are not there. You have to know, okay, go to the blue tents, go to the white tents to get people to talk to. So that was another thing. So issue related to the identification of children. The second issue that we kind of came across was women in some instances, and I don't want to generalize, but in some instances hiding the identities of their children or not presenting them so they can utilize them as a potential card for their own repatriation as well. So these are two things that kind of stood up in talking also with the rehabilitation experts recently in the Balkans as well. So what are your experiences with regards to these two questions?
Actually, I had an opportunity to talk with professionals who work with female returnees to welcome Western Balkan countries, and that was one of my questions. I asked them to ask these women who came back and to tell me more about how this problem was solved. What I heard is that the first DNA test was made when they were still in the camp in Syria, and then it was repeated again after their return. So there are many legal issues, even if the DNA test was positive and confirmed that the children of the mother. Additional problem is that one mother has more children with different fathers, and these fathers are of different nationality. So this is additional problem in relation to solving the legal status of these children, because their citizenship is not solved yet in Western Balkan countries. And this makes a lot of obstacles. For example, they can attend the school, but they cannot graduate. They cannot achieve many other civil rights other citizens, nationals have, for example, some social help or other things, because the nationality is not solved due to the fact that they don't have official documents, they don't have a birth certificate, and also the fathers are from different countries, and the nationality cannot be confirmed, of the fathers cannot be confirmed. So this is a big issue. And also another problem is that there are many orphans there, and what I heard is that families from the same background, for example, Kosovar families, were trying to take over the care of the orphans of other Kosovan nationals or Bosnian nationals, so to take care of take their children and to take care of them. So this is the other problem, and because in that case even it is not their biological mother. So there are many issues that should be solved in the future. They are not solved yet, but what I heard from the government institutions in Western Balkan countries, that they are now working to find the solution. They are trying to change the laws on citizenship, and they are looking for the solution how they actually solve this problem. They want to solve it, and they're trying to find a way how to give the citizenship to these children, because without it they will have many problems in the future.
Anita, if you wouldn't mind, I have a question for you also. So amidst the fairly uniform response of European states in refusing to repatriate citizens suspected of involvement with the Islamic State, Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina and other countries in the Western Balkans, as you mentioned, have been active in repatriating their nationals. This proactive stance stands in a strong contrast with most of European countries who are not acknowledging the responsibility of the vis-a-vis of the return of their citizens. And I wanted to ask you, what do you believe, why do you believe that the Balkan experience is different from other European countries in the same situation? Why Western Balkan countries are demonstrating a highest degree of responsibility and accountability for their children, and also what lessons learned can we infer from this region, and can this serve as a blueprint at the regional level?
It's a very good question. I was thinking about the answer on this question a lot personally, and I can only tell you my personal opinion why it is so. So one of the reasons why European EU countries are more reluctant to repatriate foreign terrorist fighters than Western Balkan countries, one of the reasons might be because foreign fighters from EU countries, a very high percentage of them are, as I said, actually not citizens, are immigrants, so are not originally nationals of these countries. While in Western Balkan countries, there is no immigrants, you know, they're all domestic people. So it's easier to, people, communities, and the government is more sensitive because it's easier to accept back these people because they don't hold dual citizenship, they didn't come from third countries, you know, they're domestic people. So that might be one of the reasons. Another reason might be, in my opinion, that all these activities on repatriation of foreign terrorist fighters were coordinated by international institutions and foreign governments, especially the US government, who provide a lot of financial and logistics support to Western Balkan countries to repatriate their citizens. So it makes it easier for this process to be organized with the support, political, logistical, financial of other countries than what these Western Balkan countries, which are quite poor, be honest, will be able to do by themselves. So this is my personal opinion why this is the reason, maybe why we have a higher percentage of returning foreign terrorist fighters in Western Balkans than in other European countries. But on the other side, these financial issues is wars in Western Balkan, and the system in providing their appropriate care and support is lower than in European countries. So Western Balkan countries still need a lot of financial and other support from international organizations and foreign other countries to provide now a long-term support for these returnees.
Thank you very much, Anita. I see we have a question from Ian Bradbury. Ian, please go ahead.
Hi there, everyone. Hi, Anita. Thank you very much for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. I've got a two-part question for you. The first part being, you mentioned a multi-agency and the need for a holistic multi-agency response. Just kind of wondering if you guys did any mapping of what that looks like, what the various agencies are and what their roles and responsibilities are within that mapping. And the second piece would be in relation to, say, like the long-term monitoring and evaluation on the youth returnees, particularly under a youth justice framing. For example, in Canada, under our systems, records are expunged under youth justice at 18 years old once they've passed beyond that. So in the protections measures, Just wondering what sort of things maybe the Balkans put in place to allow for that kind of long-term monitoring and evaluation beyond what would be considered, say, like a youth justice box.
Okay, I will start with the second question. And in my opinion, and I was talking a lot with the practitioners in both EU countries and in Western Balkan countries, and I would say that in none of these countries there is still no clear idea how this should be done. And there is still the lack of appropriate tools, how to evaluate the progress, how to evaluate the measures, at what would be the best way how to do it, and how long it should last. So I think that there is no difference between EU and Western Balkan countries, and this is still one of this is still a very huge challenge to resocialization and rehabilitation of minors, how to achieve this and how to evaluate the implemented measures. I hope that I answered your question. Yes, regarding multi-agency, a holistic multi-agency approach, in Western Balkan countries, actually the system is very similar in the whole Europe. It requires the coordinated actions of different government institutions, meaning ministries of interior, ministries of social welfare, ministries of education. So all the government institutions that have to work together to establish the system which would be helpful and which will provide what is needed for children and for minors. In Western Balkan countries, it's a little bit different situation, more difficult, because there's still many cases where individuals and communities lack trust in government institutions. And this is the problem, how to gap this bridge and how to build trust in government institutions that they will provide appropriate help. Did I answer your questions?
Yes. Thank you very much for that. Curious, did you by chance do any mapping so that you know, we know or have an idea of what specific government institutions, like we know that policing would be involved in health and things like that, but just curious if you guys actually did a mapping that lays out that structure.
Actually, I'm still writing a new run paper which will be published this month. It will be an ad hoc paper on repatriated foreign terrorist fighters and their families, European experiences and lessons learned. And here in this paper, you will be able to find examples from different countries how this system is organized, I mean multi-agency system. Also the differences in experiences and approaches in Europe, different ways how they organize. Some countries have national coordinators, some countries have specially appointed returnee coordinators who coordinate all these activities, not only related to repatriation, but after repatriation, the whole process of rehabilitation into society. So you will find there by the end of the month a very detailed explanation on how this system is organized in different EU and Western Balkan countries.
Perfect. I very much look forward to that one coming out.
Your contact, I can inform you on the day when it will be published. I finalized it actually, and now I'm waiting for the approval of the European Commission to be published, but I expect it to be by the end of this month.
Excellent. I very much look forward to that. I'll send you my contacts. Thank you.
Thank you. You all have my email address on the very last slide of my presentation, so feel free to contact me at any time.
Thank you, Anita. I wish not to monopolize this discussion, but I would have another question for you, if you don't mind. You mentioned in your presentation that with respect to women affiliated with the Islamic State who have repatriated in Western Balkans, the governments of those countries have demonstrated a softer approach with respect to their male counterparts. I wanted to ask you, why is it so? And what are the consequences, on your opinion, of this denial of agencies for women involvement with a terrorist organization?
Again, my personal opinion, knowing better than you the mentality in Western Balkan countries than in Western European countries. What was seen in the last years when the process of moving to Syria started is that from Western Balkan countries we had many families, even 2- and 3-generation families moving to Syria, while from other European countries there were in higher percentage individuals who moved there. So I would also make connections with the mentality of people and the opinion that in Western Balkan countries where women are still considered as not as I don't want to be rude, I'm a woman myself, that they're not so active or not so important, but that their position within the family is not as important as men's position. And there is the impression in the wider community that women are not so important and they could not be so active as men in any business, not only in this terrorism business, let's say, or in the activities in Syria and Iraq, which is very wrong, because we have many women. Ardian knows that even better than me. We have many women in Syria who are very active, who are member of Al-Qansa Brigade and who are very active in training other women and recruiting other women. And I think that there is some biases in Western Balkan countries about the agency of women and their possible activities, which I think it's very wrong, and it's a misunderstanding of what women are capable to do, what women want to do, and what was their motivation to move there and to join ISIS. And it was not only, even in case of women from Western Balkan countries, it was not just that they want to follow their husbands. No, not at all. I think that this is the misunderstanding, but still very present in Western Balkan countries, as I said, not only in the field of terrorism, but in many other fields as well. I hope that Ardian agree with me, or maybe Ardian, you have another impression. You also know the mentality of Western Balkan people well.
Anita, I agree with you, and I think you're trying to strike the right balance in explaining the context of situation. So when people ask us, often what's the role of women inside ISIS, I often say it's a question that you should ask me more often, because it changes. The more we understand their role, the better we are to operationalize that. But they've served in different capacities, and even the issue of prosecution is very much tied to the issue of agency. So we could prove agency on their part, let's say, in Iraq or in Syria, we could much more easily make a case about their prosecution. Like you said, women went over there, but it was easier for men to come back than it was for women. It was easier. If I'm a fighter myself, I can go, I can fight and come back. But when I go there, I have a family, I have children, the whole prospect of returning becomes more problematic. Women move from one place to the other, they move from one apartment to the other apartment. And now we see instances of them being charged for war crimes because they utilized apartments that were seized by ISIS. So the question is, did women have agency actually in decision-making when it came to moving from one apartment to the other? So there's a lot of questions that it ties to the issue of agency. So I think the point, when we get to that point of trying to better understand, I think we can maybe get to better answer the issue of prosecution. But as Anita also mentioned, it kind of relates to the question of our previous interlocutor, and I apologize his name, I didn't get it, where there is a talk about how do we deal with the women prosecution in the context of women who again have gone over there, that and come back, we cannot prove, what's happening with their agency. And, it's a very sensitive kind of situation. It's a very sensitive topic. I think the North Macedonia recently came out with a publication. I should say Mr. Rosan wrote a great publication with other co-authors on the experiences of Northern Macedonia, where they specifically point out this holistic multi-agency approach where the prosecution, rehabilitation experts, counselors, they kind of weigh in the whole situation on a case-by-case basis as to what to do with the women when it comes to prosecution. So that's a great example to kind of deal with, and this holistic approach when it comes to prosecution as well. So I think there's more unknowns, and Anita, I hope we look forward to reading more from you as about the experiences of specific countries as well.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add that women also, I have the impression that women also use this on their behalf, use this sorry for my English, that they use the opportunity to be presented more as victims, or just wives of the fighters who didn't do anything wrong in Syria and Iraq, who just took care of the children and doing some housework, which is completely wrong. And there are many cases confirmed that actually the main motivating factor within the family before they moved to Syria and Iraq were women who actually forced their husbands to go there, who pushed them to move to Syria and Iraq. It was women who initiated actually the trip to Syria. So I think that women also use this opportunity to present themselves as the victims, especially in this situation when it is really very difficult to collect evidence about some criminal activities of all of them, no matter if they are male or female. It is very difficult to collect evidence, to prosecute them. And I really think that women also use this opportunity to present themselves only as victims and as housewives who didn't know anything, who didn't do anything wrong. They just took care of the children. And another aspect is that this is maybe more important to take care of the children and to educate children in line with the ISIS ideology. This is in the long term maybe more dangerous than the fighting in Syria itself. Because if women will continue to raise their children to support this ideology, this will be a much bigger, higher damage in the long term that these men who were fighting for a couple of months or a couple of years in Syria and Iraq. So I think that that women are, that we in general underestimated the role of women and the importance in women in this in terrorism and in all this story about ISIS and ISIS ideology in the long term.
Thank you very much, Anita. It seems to me we have had the opportunity in the CRTG working group to discuss the particular role of women with respect to children in the past, and so it's an extremely important topic. I hope that these challenges would call for a reformation of the perception of the women in society, and hopefully support rehabilitation and reintegration processes of themselves also. If you allow me now, I see that we have a question from William from the Romeo Dallaire Child Soldier Initiative. William, please go ahead.
Hello, and thank you very much for your presentation. My apologies, I was in transit and arrived a bit late. So it's still Bill, I'm just on a different phone. Thank you for this information. This very much comes at the heart of what we're working on. And one of the questions that we've been looking at has been, when we're talking about the rehabilitation, and in particular with the children and mothers, if mothers continue to be a radicalizing factor, how do we deal with the children? We can offer them, and offering them continued services, very, very important. You know, certainly in the long term, particularly for instances of untreated PTSD, issues of moral injury and things like that. But if our dealings with them are continually undone at home, as we see in many other instances, how can we approach that issue? Is it something that we would say, set up services that are not just for the child, not just for the mother, but also as sort of the family unit? Or how can you see some potential avenues to avoid the work with the children being undermined by other people in the family unit, and not necessarily the mothers? I don't want to say it's them. It could be other influences in the family. Thank you.
Yeah, this is another huge challenge, how to solve this problem. And this is why many European countries are reluctant to repatriate mothers. They only accept children, or they separate children from mothers at the airport after arrival and send children to the family members or to foster families. In case when children were sent to family members, the assessment was made prior to return of the children, when the family members were assessed if they share radical ideas, support all this, what their daughters or sons did with when they join ISIS, and if it is confirmed with high degree that there are family members who do not support and do not share radical ideas, then they take care or take over care of the children. Otherwise, the children were sent to foster families or to other institutions who take care of the child. What I saw in Western Balkan countries is that, for example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, all mothers are with children, and they returned to their families. They were accepted by their families, even if all these families did not support or approved their trip to Syria. But in these families, in very short time, there were many tensions, and some of these women and children are now looking for some alternative housing. They cannot stay with the families because other family members accuse them on a daily basis what they did. And what is still visible with women in Bosnia particularly, that they're disappointed with what happened to them in Syria, and they don't want to return, but they're still very positive regarding the ideology that ISIS promoted online about the true Islam, clear Islam. So it will be a challenge to assess with a high percentage to be sure that these women will not influence their children to follow this, to continue to follow this ideology. Because what we can see is that these women returned, they're happy that they're back, but they still, for example, cover their face or wear niqab, what they never did before, and which is not usual in Bosnia, for example, which means that they don't want, they're still satisfied with this religious part of ISIS ideology. They're disappointed with the political part and how the Islamic State was organized and what's happened with the Islamic State. So I still have some doubts how they will in the future influence their children. In Kosovo, the situation is quite different because I think that 16 women are sentenced to jail because of the participation in terrorist organization, which means that they are now separated from their children, but children are with the families. It will be a long-term challenge to see when they came back, because the sentences are quite low. They will return to their families in a quite short time. How this influence will reflect on the children, of course. This is a big issue, because what is seen also with these returnees is that children are they have very strong connections with their mothers, because after they return to Europe, there is quite a lot of stigmatization. They're not so accepted by the community where they return. So they have more close relations with mothers than maybe usually children have who lives in normal circumstances. So this is why it is very important to keep an eye on this, and to first to educate all professionals who work with families, because social workers, psychiatrists, they don't have enough knowledge on how to recognize all these signs of radicalization, all this negative influence. The problem is that they don't know that. They're experts in their field, but they're not experts in radicalization, in recognizing the signs of radicalization. And that's why there is, I think in all countries, there is a need for additional training to give them skills, to learn them how to recognize these signs that there is some negative influence in this security, from this security part on children or on other family members.
Thank you.
And this will definitely be a long-term challenge as well.
Yes, absolutely. And if I could just follow up on that. In Canada, we have a long history, and not a great history, of separating kids from their family unit with Indigenous kids. And they created, over many, many years, they created residential schools and took kids away for, for their good, right? It was very much white supremacy related, right? Pulling them out of that. But it was a long history. So now we're in a situation where social services are extremely reluctant to break up those family units, particularly in cases of ethnic minorities, because it feels the same way. So so it's interesting, and there's always great suspicion when they say we're doing it in the best interests. Are you doing it in the best interests of the child or of the white people who are going to, be involved? So those are some things that they have to look at. And I guess part of that would be the transparency of the risk assessments, and, the checks and balances on each stage of that. So it's not just one person or one group saying, yes, we need to separate it, but really doing a very transparent, multi-sectorial, as you said, risk assessment. So thank you very much. That's great. That helps a lot.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Anita?
Anita, if you don't mind, I'll just go ahead with another question, if it's okay.
Of course.
So, thank you. So,
when I will see you next time. So.
Yes, sure. That's fair enough. So, okay. So I have a question that's, again, kind of relates to the issue of prosecution of women. So recently, a few days ago, I read something where Europeans, a lot of European countries are kind of gearing towards accepting what they refer to as battlefield evidence, right? So, what is the move on that in that realm? To me, having spent time over the battlefield evidence could be really confusing terms sometimes. Do we get information only from the FBI? Do we get information also from the Syrian Democratic Forces? What is knowing that there is no existing information sharing among the SDF as a non-state armed group, and member countries as well. So are there any more discussion in terms of what does battlefield evidence mean? One, and secondly, what are the repercussions of when it comes to admissibility of this kind of evidence, battlefield evidence, in the civilian criminal courts?
It's a good question, and there is no clear answer on that. What I know about it and what I heard from the police and intelligence services in various European countries, so the main problem is still and will stay the lack of evidence about concrete activities, what someone did. It is simpler if someone posted pictures on their social network, how they kill someone or behead someone or things like that. But it is not, it could not be an evidence on court in each country. Some countries said that they can accept it as an evidence that the crime is committed or war crime is committed, and that a person can be sentenced based on this. But in some countries, they said this cannot be accepted at court as an evidence, especially in case of women. For example, we had one woman, you probably know that, from Bosnia, who posted a picture on her Facebook profile. She was wearing niqab, and she posted a picture how she execute one of her colleagues from Al-Kansa Brigade. And the judges from Bosnia said that this cannot be accepted as an evidence at court because the face of this woman is not visible. So they cannot confirm the identity. Even if it is her personal Facebook profile, and even if she wrote on this is me, and today I participated in execution of one of the women who is also a member of Al-Kansa Brigade. But the judge said that this will not be accepted as an evidence at court because it is not clearly visible. The face of the woman and the identity cannot be confirmed at the court. So what is now the most reliable, I would say, part or article from the criminal codes is the participation in terrorist organizations. When some countries amended their criminal codes and said that an individual can be sentenced to jail even if they move to the territory where some terrorist organization exists, join this terrorist organization, and that just the fact that they participated and joined the terrorist organizations, that based on that they can be sentenced to jail. And I think that most of the cases are now such, and it will stay such, that they will prosecute just participation in terrorist organization, not committing precise crimes or war crimes, because there will not be enough evidence for that.
Mm-hmm. I have a follow-up, Anita, if you don't mind. So the criminalization to an organization, the criminalization of membership to a particular organization, it is something that in criminal law has been applied the last time in history during the trials against the Nazi regime. And so I wanted to ask you if we see nowadays this type of practice that is being reapplied among EU member states in order to prosecute ISIS members, and if yes, is this legitimate? And also, how would be prosecuted? What it would be the sentence? Should that be the charge?
There are still many debates ongoing on whether how to prosecute the participation in terrorist organization, because some experts says that there also have to be a proof that you have to have some evidence that you join a terrorist organization. You have to have a written proof. Yes, this person, this individual is a member of a terrorist organization. In case of those who moved to Syria and Iraq to join ISIS, we don't have it. So many countries accepted and amended the criminal code, saying that just traveling and moving to the areas which are under ISIS control are considered as an evidence for joining ISIS. And there are still many debates ongoing, and different countries accept a different interpretation of this participation or joining of terrorist organizations, and there are still many doubts how to solve this problem. And this is one of the reasons why the sentences are quite low, because there are many cases where foreign fighters are sentenced to up to 5 years to jail, 2, 3, 5 years to jail, which is quite low. This will be another issue if they are dangerous, if they pose a high security risk, if they were trained there to commit maybe terrorist attacks in their domestic countries after return. They will be sent out from jail in a very short time, and then we will have a lot of security issues to do with them, because taking security measures and following them and control their activities will be very problematic, because it requires a lot of finances and staff for the police and intelligence services to take care of all these returnees in a long period of time, and to control what they're doing, which contacts they have, what they plan, do they try to establish any terrorist network in Europe after their return. So this is still not solved, and there are different solutions in different countries, but not the most appropriate ones, I would say.
Mm. Thank you very much, Anita. I saw that Ian had a question. Ian, would you like to follow up?
Yes, please. I just had another thought that came to my mind. Anita, I'm wondering if you, in your works, if you identified any youth programs that were designed or developed specifically to cater to either the male youth or the female youth.
I would say no. I would say no. I know that there are some initiatives in different European countries to have something like that, but that it is already created and implemented, I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware of it.
Thank you very much.
Anita, I have a very last question. How do you see this process of repatriation and rehabilitation and reintegration moving forward? How this situation, in your personal opinion, will develop, and what do you expect in the upcoming year?
What do I expect? I expect that the process will continue in Western Balkan countries, due to the fact that the international support will make it easier for Western Balkan countries to do it, and I believe that they will continue with repatriation processes. In other Western European countries, I would say that in repatriation, and they will continue to prioritize the return of children children in most of the cases. But also this is my personal opinion, current personal opinion.
Thank you. Ardian, would you like to add something to that?
Thank you, Cecilia. I concur and with what Anita said, and I agree with that. But I think that it's also that we have to see more move on the parts of the governments to get to the information sharing when it comes to whether it's directly with the SDF or through intermediaries, as far as what happened in Iraq and Syria. There's a lot of talks about directly engaging with the SDF. And again, just to be politically correct, that's a very politically, legally sensitive area, but it's something that government should consider and not give up on potentially wealth of information that's available out there that could be used for prosecution purposes, or even for, locating, repatriating children and whatnot. So this is I see this as an ongoing debate in the near and long term as well. So we hope we get to hear a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just like to add that European Parliament called on EU member states in November 2019 to repatriate the children of European foreign terrorist fighters, and on the EU to implement coordinated actions. So in more actively than before, but it is also more focused on repatriation of children. But there will be, for sure, there will be pressure from the European Parliament, European Commission to continue with this process. But as I said, more regarded to children than to adults. So we will see.
Thank you very much, Anita, for the time that you have dedicated to us and to this important discussion. It has been truly a pleasure to hear to your presentation and to learn about your work. Also, Ardian, thank you very much for joining us and contributing with your important remarks. To our CRTG working group members, thank you for joining this session, and I look forward to the opportunity for additional engagement with all of you.
Thank you very much to all of you, and hope we will stay in touch in the future.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you, Ardian.
Thank you, Cecilia. Anita, great presentation. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.